At 02:41 a.m. on December 2, 2025, the Crimean Bridge was the most heavily defended structure on Earth. Protected by 4 battalions of Pantsir SM missiles, 2 S-400 batteries, and a squadron of Su-35 fighters, it was theoretically untouchable. Inside the command center, a Russian lieutenant bites into a sandwich. Suddenly, the Podlet K1 radar screen blinks. 8. Just 8 distinct signals appear from the southwest, skimming 15 feet above the black water at 110 miles per hour. The alarm screams. The lieutenant grabs his radio, but he isn't panicked. He's amused. This isn't an attack, it's target practice. Shoot them down! He is making a fatal miscalculation. He thinks he is fighting a conventional air raid. He has no idea that he is actually caught in the middle of the most sophisticated asymmetric trap of the war. Those 8 drones are just the bait. Less than 2 miles away, inside a dark apartment in Kerch, a retired shipyard worker is staring at the bridge, holding a modified, encrypted trigger device. In exactly 90 seconds, he is going to turn Russian billion-dollar air defense network into useless scrap metal. To understand how a fishing boat and a modified cell phone can dismantle the Russian Black Sea fleet, we have to go back to the port of Ochakiv and a cargo that smells like rotten fish. At 9:37 p.m. on November 30th, 2025, the small port of Ochakiv is pitch black. Standing on the deck of a weathered wooden fishing trawler named Svoboda 3 is Mykola, a 72-year-old retired shipyard welder. He doesn't look like a saboteur. He looks like a man worried about his catch quota. He shields a faint blue flashlight with his hand, checking the time on a 20-year-old Casio watch. He keys a handheld radio and whispers a phrase that sounds like a grandfather's concern but is actually a launch code. Put the kids to bed, uncle. Deep in the cargo hold, beneath layers of heavy canvas and crates reeking of stale squid, the kids are resting. 2 massive Magura V6 unmanned surface vessels and 6 fiber-optic FPV drones are packed tight against the hull. The Svoboda 3 slips away from the dock. There are no navigation lights. There is no radar signature to track. There is only the rhythmic hacking cough of a 50-year-old diesel engine pushing through the waves. To any coastal sensor, it is just another noise in the night. But that boat smells like 2 things: rotting fish and freedom. At 02:38 a.m., inside the control cabin of Pantsir SM Unit 14, exactly 5.5 miles from the bridge, Lieutenant Dmitry is bored. The 24-year-old officer is busy live-streaming a covert TikTok to his girlfriend when his radar screen suddenly lights up. 6 targets, altitude 250 feet, moving slow and loud. "Oh, this is too easy," Dmitry laughs, barely looking away from his phone camera. He doesn't bother with a detailed track ID, he simply punches the launch sequence. 1257E 6 hypersonic interceptors roar off the rails, turning the night sky into a screaming wall of fire. At $1.2 million per missile, this is a $14.4 million salvo. Seconds later, the horizon lights up with 6 distinct fireballs. The screen flashes splash 6 times. The cabin erupts in cheers. Dmitry turns back to his live stream, winking at the camera. "Done, baby, just some toy drones. I'll be home early." He has no idea what he just did. Those weren't warheads. They were plywood decoys carrying nothing but radar reflectors. Dmitry just spent the budget of a small hospital to destroy $3,900 worth of hobby parts. At 02:39 a.m. and 12 seconds, the silence returns to the apartment on the 7th floor overlooking the Kerch Strait. Petro, a 68-year-old retired shipyard worker, sits in his worn armchair. He isn't looking at the explosion of the decoys in the distance. He is looking at his wrist, waiting for the second hand to align perfectly with the 12. On the small table next to him sits a device that looks like a relic from another era, a Nokia 3310. But the internals have been stripped and replaced with a custom encrypted transmitter. His thumb presses the sequence, the signal goes out. Instantaneously, across the city of Kerch, 38 separate devices wake up. To the Russian FSB patrols who had driven past them for months, they looked like innocent strings of LED Christmas lights draped over balconies, street lamps, and fences. In reality, they are high-powered, military-grade LTE active repeaters. They don't explode, they scream. Inside the command centers of the Pantsir SM, the S-400 battery, and the Project 22160 patrol ship, the radar screens turn a blinding solid white. The military processors designed to track missiles and jets are suddenly overwhelmed by a tsunami of digital garbage. The targeting computers try to interpret the signal and fail spectacularly. Instead of enemy coordinates, the tactical displays are flooded with the digital equivalent of a civilian internet cafe. For a fleeting moment, the billion-dollar air defense network of the Russian Federation isn't tracking threats. It is being forced to process a localized buy one, get one free ad campaign from a Ukrainian online retailer. That is the moment when the playing field levels. The cutting-edge Russian radar isn't broken. It is simply confused, blinded by its own sophistication. It is the moment when a multi-billion-dollar military complex gets effectively rickrolled by a 68-year-old pensioner with a modified cell phone. At 02:40 a.m. and 07 seconds, the concrete tarmac of Belbek Air Base vibrates as two Su-35s flankers kick their afterburners into full reheat. Inside the lead cockpit is Captain Artyom Volkov. He is one of Russia's aces, but tonight his mind isn't entirely on the war. He is running on 3 hours of sleep and the lingering adrenaline of a screaming argument with his wife over the phone just 2 hours ago. He is angry, he is tired, and he is looking for something to break. As the jets scream toward the Kerch Strait at Mach 1.5, Artyom's massive Urbis-E passive electronically scanned array radar burns through the night. While the ground-based Pantsir and S-400 systems are still blinded by the Christmas light interference below, Artyom has the high ground. His heads-up display flashes red. There they are! Two Magura V6s sea drones cutting through the water at 40 knots, carrying a combined payload of nearly 2,000 pounds of high explosives. They are the only things left between the bridge and disaster. Artyom doesn't hesitate. He doesn't wait for a wingman confirmaton. He flips the master arm switch and selects the crown jewel of the Russian arsenal, the R-37M. These are hypersonic air-to-air missiles designed to shoot down AWACS planes and bombers from 200 miles away. Each one costs $3.8 million. Using them on sea drones is like using a sledgehammer to kill an ant. But Artyom doesn't care about the budget, he cares about the kill. Two missiles drop from the fuselage. Their solid rocket motors ignite with a blinding flash, accelerating instantly to Mach 6. At this precise moment, the fate of the war in the south hangs in a terrifying balance. On one side, you have the Crimean Bridge, a $3.7 billion engineering marvel, the personal pride of Vladimir Putin, and the literal lifeline supplying 78% of the Russian army's fuel and ammunition. On the other side, you have two plastic drones the size of a kayak, controlled by a guy on a fishing boat. And in the middle, you have $7.6 million worth of hypersonic missiles screaming through the air, guided by one very pissed-off fighter pilot who just wants to go home. The missiles have 46 seconds to impact, the bridge is defenseless, the ground radars are blind, it all comes down to this. At 02:40 a.m. and 21 seconds, the timeline of the attack enters its final, most chaotic phase. Hidden in 18 municipal dumpsters, 12 roadside bushes, and 5 abandoned rooftops along the Kerch coastline, spring-loaded latches pop open. 900 micro-drones launch simultaneously into the wind. These aren't weapons, they are distractions. Weighing just 0.7 pounds each, made of styrofoam with $10 electric motors, they are programmed to fly erratically between 150 and 400 feet. Their radar cross-section and thermal signature are calibrated to match a Crimean seagull to a 99.7% accuracy. Inside the cockpit of the Su-35, Captain Artyom Volkov is waiting for the splash of his missiles. Instead, his radar screen suffers a seizure. In a single heartbeat, the two distinct targets he was tracking are joined by 900 new contacts. The display becomes a solid wall of red static. The sophisticated targeting computer, designed to track NATO fighters, tries to lock onto everything at once and locks onto nothing. The two R-37M missiles screaming in at Mach 6 activate their own terminal active radar seekers. Confused by the sudden cloud of targets, the seekers divert. The first missile screams past the Maguras and detonates harmlessly into the sea. The second missile finds a cluster of the Styrofoam drones. It detonates. A $3.8 million warhead vaporizes a flock of fake birds worth less than $200. Beneath the chaos, unnoticed by the blinded radar and the panicked pilot, the two Magura V6s sea drones glide silently into the dark shadow cast by the bridge. They have entered the dead zone. No missile can touch them now. High above, Artyom sees the explosion of feathers and foam. He slams his fist against the canopy glass, letting out a long, guttural scream of absolute despair. He knows it's over. Somewhere in Crimea tonight, a Russian fighter pilot is learning the painful difference between a seagull and a suicide drone. At 02:41 a.m. and 33 seconds, two dull, heavy thuds echo from beneath the waterline. They sound like God knocking on the door. The massive concrete pillars shudder. The middle of span number 9 begins to fall. Two shaped charges detonate simultaneously against the submerged concrete foundations. But this isn't just high explosives, this is a combined 1,900-pound payload of thermobaric mixture. When detonated underwater, it creates a terrifying phenomenon known as a bubble pulse. The explosion instantly vaporizes the water, creating a massive, rapidly expanding gas bubble that pushes the water back with tremendous force. But the real destruction happens a fraction of a second later. The bubble collapses in on itself, creating a vacuum so powerful it sucks the surrounding water and the concrete pillars inward at supersonic speeds. The reinforced steel rebar inside the pillars, designed to withstand earthquakes and storms, is subjected to a shearing force it was never engineered to survive. In 0.7 seconds, the steel tears like wet paper. The structural integrity of the bridge dissolves. Pillars number 8 and number 10 are sheared cleanly off at a depth of 40 feet below the surface. Above the water, the massive span number 9 suddenly loses its legs. For a heartbeat, the 210-meter section of asphalt and steel hangs suspended in the air, defying gravity. Then, reality catches up. The span freefalls 185 feet. It takes exactly 4.8 seconds to hit the water. The impact sends a tsunami of spray 5 stories high, swallowing the debris. The pride of Russian infrastructure has just been converted into an artificial reef. The strategic consequences are immediate and catastrophic. The road bridge is severed completely. Traffic stops dead. But the rail bridge next to it suffers a more insidious fate. The shockwave from the collapse has warped the steel rails and shifted the foundation by just 4 inches. That 4 inches is the difference between a high-speed logistics line and a bottleneck. Russian engineers will later determine that while the rail bridge is still standing, it is structurally compromised. Train speeds are immediately restricted to 6 miles per hour. The throughput capacity of the line drops by 78% in an instant. But the worst news is on the tracks right now. 3 trains carrying heavy ammunition were crossing the strait at the moment of impact. The vibration derails the lead locomotive of the first train, leaving it dead on the tracks, blocking the line. The shockwave destabilizes the other 2. As the foundations shift, 17 cars loaded with 152mm artillery shells tip slowly, agonizingly off the rails and plunge into the dark water below. The southern front of the Russian army hasn't just lost a bridge, they have lost their lungs. The physical collapse of the span is just the beginning. The real damage is measured in time and hunger. Based on the repair timelines from the previous 2 attacks, structural engineers estimate this damage will take between 8 to 14 months to fix. That is 14 months where the main artery of the Russian war machine is clamped shut. The consequences for the front line are immediate. The Russian 58th Combined Arms Army, fighting in the trenches of Zaporizhzhia, relies on this bridge for 70% of its logistics. Overnight, they have gone from a steady diet of shells and fuel to a starvation ration. Their combat endurance has just been cut from weeks to days. The humiliation extends to the sea. The mighty Black Sea Fleet, unable to trust the rail line, is forced to revert to using civilian car ferries to transport military hardware. It is a logistical nightmare. The speed of their supply chain drops by 86%. They are no longer a blue water navy. They are a glorified ferry service running on a schedule dictated by the weather. In Moscow, the spin machine goes into overdrive. Vladimir Putin appears on state television. He stands stiffly behind a podium, calling the incident a minor technical structural anomaly and promising that repairs are already underway. But the 4K cameras tell a different story. They zoom in, capturing the slight tremor in his hands and the sweat on his brow. He is telling the world it's a scratch, but his body language screams that he knows he just lost the South. Let's look at the final balance sheet of this operation. It is the most lopsided trade in military history. On one side, 8 drones, a budget of under $600,000, and 1 grandmother with a modified smartphone. On the other side, the $3.7 billion crown jewel of Russian infrastructure sent to the repair shop for the 3rd and likely final time. The return on investment here is infinite. Ukraine didn't just break a bridge, they broke the myth of Russian invincibility. They proved that no amount of S-400 batteries or hypersonic missiles can protect you if the people watching from the balconies want you gone. If you think Olena deserves the Hero of Ukraine medal for his tea-sipping timing, comment Slava down below right now. And make sure to smash that like button and subscribe to the channel, because at this rate, there's going to be a part 4 and you won't want to miss it. See you in the next one.